So hey y'all, I'm really excited to be here. So today I'm going to be talking about Ratatouille the musical and why it's a case for crypto. So I know my talk was initially titled The Ownership Economy, but I swear this relates, and it relates to crypto. I actually put a poll out earlier this week to let the masses decide like what to talk about. And of course, in classic crypto meme fashion, people overwhelmingly chose Ratatouille. So that's why we're here. Before we get started, let me introduce myself really quick. So I'm Medha. I've been in the crypto space since about 2017. So it's been a wild journey, honestly. I started off as a software engineer in the space, moving around a bunch of different projects until I settled on the Celo ecosystem. So that's basically like a layer one Ethereum-like chain focused on financial inclusion. And so there I was kind of working on dApp tooling and any sort of dev tooling that helped dApp developers build on top of our smart contract platform. And then most recently, I switched careers into ventures. So now I'm an investor at Variant Fund, which is a crypto-dedicated fund that's focused on the ownership economy, which is the idea that all internet-era protocols and products and projects should be owned and operated by its users. I also started a nonprofit back in 2018 called She256 with a couple of friends, and this was the first 501c3 dedicated to increasing diversity in the space, and that's something I'm still working on evenings and weekends. Yeah, so let's get back into what y'all are here for. So, show of hands, how many of you guys know or have heard of Ratatouille, like the Disney movie? Okay, sounds like almost all of you. Hands down. Now, how many of y'all have heard of Ratatouille the musical? Okay, like one person. I literally see one hand over here. Amazing. So let me give a brief overview of what this is to set the stage. So basically, the origins was that Disney, 2 years ago, in the peak of the pandemic in 2020, launched a new ride themed after the Ratatouille movie. And then a random TikToker named Emily Jacobson was really inspired by this and created a little jingle. It was really cute. It was like an ode to Remy, the rat from the movie. And she posted a TikTok with a little jingle and sped up her voice to make it sound more like Remy. And then 2 months later, this random TikTok went viral. For context, this was like October 2020, peak of the pandemic, where lots of artists had lost their jobs, Broadway was closed, and people just had so much pent-up creative energy. And so what ended up happening was thousands and thousands of people started using this sound. And then later, this musical genius of a composer, his name was Daniel Mertzliff, found the sound and made a whole-ass symphony to accompany the sound and put that into TikTok. Pretty soon, this became this theatrical movement. People started making remixes, adjacent songs, like entire songs with the new lyrics based off of like this original jingle. Dancers got involved. They took these songs and made choreographies to them. Set designers got involved and made entire visualizations of what a potential set for each scene could look like. And these are some examples of some of them. And then people from the Disney ecosystem started getting involved too. So like the original voice of Remy, like the rat from Ratatouille, got involved and started posting TikToks. Disney even made nods to it on their own social media and kind of played along with the meme, which I found really surprising. And then a group of people came together and said, we want to make a Broadway caliber digital musical, putting together all of these sort of like disparate creative ideas from TikTok into one cohesive online play. So they held auditions, made this whole playbill, poster, like everything. It was really official. And then really famous people started getting involved. Like if you guys know Titus Burgess from Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, he's in the middle right here. J.J. Riemann from Book of Mormon, Ashley Park from Emily in Paris. And they put together this entire production. They started selling tickets on the official playbill site, which is where Broadway shows sell tickets. And then they said that all the money would be donated towards the Actors Fund, which is a nonprofit for the acting community. And then the musical happened, and it ended up getting over 245 million views and raised over $2 million in just a course of like a couple weeks. And I watched it all, and it was a whole production. I found the whole idea so cool. Like, I was just geeking out when I was thinking about it because people took original Disney canon and remixed it to make an entire new reality and a whole other host of like media of creations. And so I think this was one of the coolest examples of large-scale, decentralized content creation, community-led creation that I've ever really seen. So now you guys are probably wondering, okay, she spent the last 4 minutes talking about Ratatouille. Where's the crypto? And trust me, you just have to like trust the process. I swear, it all makes sense. So I kind of alluded to this whole theatrical phenomenon as decentralized content creation, and this concept is also happening very rapidly in the crypto space right now. Specifically, this has been happening in two ways. One is artist-owned NFT media, so individual, like musicians, for example, or artists selling their NFT art. And then two, through community-owned NFT media using CC0. So let me start with the latter one, because I think that's the one people have more questions about. So what is CC0? This is basically the Creative Commons license, not a crypto thing at all, it's just a license, which allows people to contribute their projects or art or whatever to be used for public use. The idea is that you're basically giving up all of your IP and copyright and whatever other rights associated with your work and dedicating them to the public domain for anyone to use for any purpose. They can also make money off of it, like they can do whatever they want. And increasingly, it's becoming more and more common to launch NFT projects under this license. So some notable examples include Nouns and Blipmap. So I'll go over Nouns. Nouns is this generative NFT project on the Ethereum chain. They're these little cute pixel characters, and they've gone anywhere between like 30 to even over 100 ETH, which is a sizable amount of money. And one noun is generated every day. And on their FAQ page, they have this little blurb, and it's basically verbiage around how they're CC0. So they said, Nouns is an open standard for generative art, and because all artwork is released under the public domain and the code is open source, artists and developers both are free to build and use Nouns in any way they want. And Nouns is just as much yours as it is ours, which I thought was really interesting. I think what this enables is that there's so much composability and remixability that developers and artists can kind of like imbue into the system. And the idea with CC0 is that all of these derivative works end up accruing value back to the original. And of course, there's definitely drawbacks to this. Like, I'm not going to spend all my time talking about that, but like, you know, these things could be corrupted. Like, you know, malicious actors could kind of take control of this like media IP and do bad things with it. Or the fact that like, you know, individual artists now have the same rights as everyone else also has like interesting effects. But the thesis here is that CC0 projects allow for much more network effects than non-CC0 projects and are way more likely to create sustainable communities. And these CC0 projects will attract builders and developers and artists that add continual value to these communities, and this value is then accrued to the original, like NFT holders. And this can kind of be seen with Nouns. They have a treasury of 17,000 ETH right now, which, you know, depending on the price of ETH, can be anywhere between like 20 to $60 million, which is a lot of money. And they only have a community of around 200 people right now, or 200 entities. But the market has deemed them valuable, clearly, despite the fact that the IP is owned by everyone. So let's take this idea back to my original example of Ratatouille the musical. So there's three different kind of leading questions that I want to start with. The first one was, what would happen if Disney, the brand, was CC0? So Disney could at any point have sued any of these like TikTok creators for using their IP, for like creating this play, for whatever. Luckily they didn't, and they were weirdly like supportive of this to an extent. But they really could have sued them. And then also, Disney can at any point take this idea that went super viral and turn it into their own play. Like, I fully imagine, like, in a couple years, there's going to be a Broadway play completely, like, filmed after this. And they don't really need to give credit or compensation to any of the original creators. If they do, that's on them, that's great, but they have no, like, they have no need to do that. But imagine a world where Disney characters and the whole like ecosystem is CC0, where anyone can create derivatives of these characters and ecosystems that Disney has developed. And again, this is just a thought exercise, but I think it could lead to some really, really interesting experiments that we've never had a chance to do. And Disney would, of course, still get the benefits from this, based on the ideas and the thesis behind CC0 that I mentioned. Take this a step further, and what if the content itself had been created on decentralized rails? Imagine if the content itself was launched on a platform that was crypto native. So like, what if the TikToks themselves could have been made into NFTs where you could point each asset back to the original creator? For a little bit of context, when the TikTok movement turned into a kind of official Broadway play vibe, there was a little bit of pushback with the play. Even though it was made and inspired by the community of original TikTok creators didn't necessarily get a direct cut out of it, right? Like all the money from the tickets were donated, and even though they worked with the original creators, again, the value didn't necessarily accrue to them directly. But you can imagine if the platform they had used to launch this content had allowed for things like upgradable NFTs, for example, that could have been very, very different. For example, you could imagine a singer could have put out vocals and lyrics for one of the Ratatouille songs, and then later allowed a composer to upgrade the NFT with music, and then both of them would kind of get the value accrual, and they could even program things like splits, like, okay, the artist for every resale gets this amount, the singer gets this, whatever it is. And then lastly, the last leading question, what if these TikToks were actually CC0 NFTs? So not just artist-owned NFTs, but that the artist had put out into the public domain, which again would just only add to the remixability and composability of these little units. And in theory, the value would still accrue to the original NFT media, which would then be owned by the creator. And so they would kind of earn revenue that way. But yeah, all in all, I think the most important thing to note here is that the space is truly so new, and all of these things are experiments. I don't know what will end up taking off, but I think playing around with different crypto-enabled business models and media experiences is going to lead to some really huge changes in how we engage with media and culture at large. But yeah, thanks so much for listening to me and coming out to my talk. If you're interested in seeing some of the more random thoughts I have, you can find them all on my Twitter, which is just my name over here. Yeah, thank you.